Well, hello and welcome to episode 191 of Drink the Movies. I am Brian here as always with Michaela. And Michaela, every once in a while there comes a movie that changes the way that you look at movies, really. We were pretty young when this one came out, but it did a lot of things in terms of extending an olive branch between companies, of saving studios, of creating entirely new ways that films could be made and entirely new ways that us, the audience, could perceive that movies were made. Things just come along that are unbelievable, and one of those movies happened when we were youngsters. Michaela, I love this in 1988. I loved it yesterday when I watched it. I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Indeed. Well, happy birthday. This is a belated birthday present because normally, full disclosure, at Drink the Movies, Michaela gets to pick all the movies generally. And on the calendar, usually around my birthday, I do something that I love. And it's something esoteric and weird and whatever. And this year, I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, Michaela, it's time to not be selfish and to give a birthday present to Brian, who also has a birthday like the week before. So happy birthday, happy belated
Thank you.
birthday.
Thank you.
And yes, what better film to kind of showcase all the things? Because it's a comedy, it's like a film noir. It is definitely the coming together of not only studios and characters from all over, like every animated genre and every animated film that ever existed prior to this, but also like coming together of two mediums of filmmaking in general, and how that happened is absolutely spectacular. It's a film that stands the test of time, that has the absolutely most beautiful woman that was ever created on the planet. It's a musical. It's all the things. This film is all the things. So
It does all the things. And, what could be more esoteric than a private eye and a rabbit solving crimes? So, Michaela, let's do this. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. We're going to need to grab some fruits because we're whipping up it's not even like a milkshake. I don't know. It's like a blended frozen thing, but it is red. It is just like Roger Rabbit, and that is what it is called. So, let's do that. We'll grab some blackberries. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back to whip up this week's drink.
Brian, this drink is actually a mocktail. However,
Hmm.
when I found it, I was like, we should definitely add some wild turkey in it to be just like Eddie Valiant. It's called the Roger Rabbit or the Jessica Rabbit. It's amazing. It's from inshaker.com. My son does not normally like really heavy, strange mocktails. He's kind of over it. He's much more of like a Shirley Temple kind of guy, but he did say that this was the best one, the best smoothie I had ever made him, which I find
Wow.
funny. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. This is very tart. So if you're into like tart candies, this is going to be right up your alley, for sure. And I am a big fan of tart candies, so I like this quite a bit. Michaela, let's go ahead and put one of these together. It's pretty simple. You are going to have to basically just go to your grocery store and go to like that little bin where they have the berries and just grab like a package of each of those. That's what you're going to need. So, into a I don't know. I use like a NutriBullet, but into like a blender or food processor, I guess probably would do the trick too. But go ahead and throw in. It's very specific about this on shaker.com. 4 blackberries, 3 strawberries, 6 raspberries. Then you're going to want to put in 3/4 of an ounce of honey, 5 ounces of cranberry juice, and some ice. What I did was I just filled up my cup with ice and put that amount in. It didn't really
Yep.
specify. I think I used a little bit too much. I would have liked it with a little bit less ice, I think, because mine got pretty chunky. So I think a little bit more liquid to ice ratio would have served me well there. Or if I would have put some more wild turkey in there, that could have done the trick too. So blend that up, and then you're going to pour it into your glass. You can drink it probably with a straw is the way you're going to want to go here, in this instance, and enjoy your Roger Rabbit mocktail. Or you can jazz this up a bunch of ways, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But Michaela, you put this together. You just mentioned that your kid liked it. What did you think about the flavors here?
So I liked it. I also thought it was pretty tart. However, I will say the cranberry juice is really going to make or break the tartness here. If you
Mm-hmm.
do real cranberry juice, like 100% cranberry that doesn't have any sugar added, yeah, it's going to be very tart. If you're going to use a cranberry cocktail that's got like, I don't know, 87,000 grams of sugar in it, it'll be fine. So I will say I tried it both ways because I wanted to be an adult, but then I also wanted my kid to like it. So my son definitely definitely preferred the one with the cocktail in it because he liked the sweetness, but he loves sour stuff in general. So
Mm-hmm.
this I thought this was good. I did the same thing. I did only a cup of ice. But it was very chunky. So my son ended up eating his with a spoon. And so it was like a
Okay.
smoothie to him.
Hmm.
Now, what I did to fix mine is I just added, an ounce and a half to 2 ounces of the wild turkey, jiggered that thing, and it was brilliant.
Well,
I really liked it.
I mean, well, Eddie Valiant has a glass of wild turkey that has about 9 ounces of it in there. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you can do a bunch of things with this, Michaela, and that's kind of what I was most excited about this because I made it and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty tart. I wouldn't really probably drink one of these on its own, but I thought if you wanted to stick with the mocktail roots, you could totally instead of using ice, use like some vanilla ice cream. That would be pretty good. That would be really nice. It would be like a tart's like kind of like a sherbet almost, right? Of like this
Mm.
wild berry sherbet. That would be pretty good. You could do that. If you wanted to, go the more alcohol driven routes, you could do kind of get to the same flavor wise. You could do like a vanilla vodka if you wanted to sweeten this up a little bit, right? You could do something like that. You could really lean into the bitterness, I think, if you wanted to use like a Campari in here, right? And really kind of capitalize on those notes. It would give it a little bit more depth, right? Instead of just being so soured, have a little bit more bitterness kind of in behind it. I thought that that would be good. You could probably use some rum and turn this into
Mm.
like a tropical like tiki kind of a blended thing. I thought that that might be pretty good. Float a little bit of dark rum on top there. That would be good. But I think this is like the groundwork for a lot of really fun flavors, and I think that that is really neat. Not something you normally get from mocktails, that are usually extra sugary or pretty one
Yeah.
dimensional and things like that. So I think that this plays really well a lot of different directions. And yeah, like you said, if you just want to do some wild turkey like Eddie Valiant does, you can definitely do that too. But any other thoughts on this, Michaela? If you're making it again, what might you throw in there, do you think?
Yeah, maybe you could play around with the honey aspect too if you wanted to. And do some like agave nectar. You could do something maybe a little less viscous. You could just use simple syrup if you were in a pinch and you wanted to make
Hmm.
it a little bit more kind of liquidy without having to change the cranberry and keep it alcohol free.
Or probably just some table sugar. To be quite honest, you're blending it anyways, so.
Yeah, good call. No, I really liked this one. And look, I wanted to do something that was reminiscent of Jessica Rabbit just because she is so iconic. And there's this whole play on what would a babe like Jessica be doing with a goofy, you know, I don't know, comedian kind of, please kind of person, the way that like Roger Rabbit is, right? Like she's this hot, like goddess, and he's just this guy who makes her laugh. And there's a whole thing about it. So I wanted to make sure to pay homage to her, and her like red sequined looking shimmery dress. This definitely shimmers. And if you put it in the right glass, it looks just like her.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's because he makes her laugh. Absolutely. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's go ahead. We'll mix up another one of these. We'll throw in some wild turkey, just for Eddie Valiant's sake there, and we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to chat about this week's film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Touchstone Pictures and Steven Spielberg present a Robert Zemeckis film.
We toons may act idiotic, but we're not stupid.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Spoiler warning for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you've not yet seen this film, that's okay because we're going to talk about all the things. And you should see it because it's wonderful. That being said, if you haven't seen it and you don't want all the endings to be spoiled, and there's some big endings here, there's some big spoilers, you should press pause. You should go make yourself either a Jessica Rabbit or a Roger Rabbit drink, which has wild turkey in it, and then you should watch the movie, and then you can come back and we can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've had plenty of opportunity to see this. This was released in 1988. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis, and it stars Bob Hoskins as our private eye, Eddie Valiant, Joanna Cassidy plays Dolores, the diner owner that has a soft spot for Eddie. Christopher Lloyd is Judge Doom, the judge, jury, and executioner seeing over Toon Town. And Roger Rabbit, our cartoon pal that gets framed for murdering Marvin Acme, is voiced by Charles Fleischer. Also worth mentioning here, there was another director who's going to go on and get some Oscar love here. Richard Williams here, who is in charge of directing the cartoon elements of this movie. Because if you're not familiar, if you woke up today, right, and you were unaware that there was this movie Roger Rabbit. It is a blending of live action and hand drawn cartoon characters. It's incredible, and it definitely went on to garner some love come Oscar time, of course, because it absolutely should have. It was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. Michaela won 3 of those. It was nominated, didn't win. Cinematography, sound, and art direction, set decoration. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. And it wins for best editing, best sound effect editing, and best visual effects. And then won that special achievement for Richard Williams for the direction and creation of the cartoon characters. Because this was something I think that had happened before, right? So like a blending of live action and cartoon characters, but not like this. This was just mind-blowing and world-changing and earth-shattering, the things they were able to accomplish here in bringing these cartoon characters to life within a real world.
And it's got the character mix that, unlike anything I've ever seen in since or before, right? Like when you first see some of these cartoon characters, you think that they've been made specifically for this film, and that makes sense. You've got Baby Huey, you've got Roger Rabbit. They've not been in anything because they're kind of property of RK Maroon and Maroon Cartoons, which is this fictional kind of cartoon house that sits in Los Angeles in 1947. However, you see Dumbo, you see Mickey Mouse, you see Porky Pig, you see Bugs Bunny, you see Daffy Duck, you see Donald, you see Goofy, you see all of these Disney characters, you see all of these Warner Brother characters, you see all of these, like Winnie the Pooh's in this. Like, it is insane, all of these different characters that you wouldn't normally see. It would be like seeing DC and Marvel coming together like in one showcase event. Right. And having, like, when you're a kid watching this, it's just really cool. But as an adult, you're like, you think it's cool, but you also are like, how in the world did they manage to come together and agree to showcase their characters this way?
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. And we can kind of talk about the ins and outs of that once we get through the movie. But yeah, I mean, I even remember it being like a big deal, like back as a kid, like people were talking about the fact there's a very infamous scene in the film where Donald Duck and Daffy Duck are on playing these dueling pianos on the same stage and having this like knockdown, drag out brawl. And like even at the time, people were like, man, I can't believe that, Disney and Warner Brothers, the Looney Tunes company are like, coming together on this. And now it's like unfathomable. Like it would never happen now. And we'll talk about that too. But yeah, it's absolutely like mind blowing that you had that. And you'd mentioned, you had the old stuff. There's a very extended scene where Eddie Valiant's talking to Betty Boop, right? Like one of the original, cartoon heartthrobs out there. So let's talk about the movie a little bit here, Michaela. This was based on a book. It came out in 1981, was Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Ron W. Miller. And we get straight into the movie here, and it is a cartoon coming from RK Maroon's cartoon company there. And we're seeing this play out with Baby Huey and Roger Rabbit.
Right. Oh my gosh. And it reminds me of like the cartoons of old when you would turn on your TV at 8 in the morning. It'd be a Saturday morning, and it was before like the time of cartoon, like 30-minute cartoon shows. It was like when you would get these 5-minute snippets of shorts, different cartoons, little shorts. And it really was, to me, it reminds me of like very Tom and Jerry-esque. This mom has left her baby who looks like a sweet baby. Baby Huey's like this adorable cooing little doe-eyed, like, cherubic kind of character. And she's left it with Roger Rabbit, who's just this ridiculous, like, very funny, but just like very goofy kind of character. And the baby sees a cookie in the cookie jar on the top of this fridge, because why would you do that? And decides to like climb up there. And poor Roger is like doing everything he can to save the baby from doing that, but he runs into problems because his feet are too big for his body or something. So he's tripping. He's got all of this like comedic, physicality that's happening. He's almost getting stabbed. He ends up in an oven. He ends up, in like impaled almost with a ironing board.
Hmm.
All of this stuff. It's just this crazy kitchen hijinks while the baby is just, it's kind of like Baby's Day Out in that, it almost drowns, but it doesn't. It ends up just, getting a cookie and everything's fine at the end, sort
Getting
of.
a getting a cookie and landing on Roger Rabbit's stomach. I always remember the part about this cartoon that always stuck with me ever since I was a kid. Watching this 10,000 times was he gets that like pot on his head and the bottle of hot sauce like falls down onto the pot.
Right.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Then they yell cut, and it's incredible. It's absolutely unbelievable that this did not win the art direction set decoration. I should have looked up what won because this is a crime because it cuts from the cartoon and real people walk onto the cartoon set. And then like all of the cartoon props are real life actual props that look like cartoon props. It's unbelievable. It's mind blowing how they did it, how realistic it looks. It's so crazy. But we have to yell cuts, of course, because Roger was supposed to see stars and he saw birds. That's not great. Baby Huey, as it turns out, is like a old like gruff guy who loves his cigars and his ladies and things like that. So that's pretty funny. And then we're going to go into RK Maroon's office, right? This is his movie studio, and he's brought in a private eye by the name of Eddie Valiant to come in and do a little bit of digging, right? Because Roger Rabbit there, he's not getting his job done right, and he's trying to get his head straight a little bit. He thinks something might be going on kind of in the background, and Eddie Valiant's going to be brought in to do a little bit of snooping on Roger's wife, right? Jessica Rabbit, who we presume to be just some other rabbit type of a character like Roger here, but Eddie's going to be sent on the case to do a little bit of snooping in this down on his luck private eye.
And I love this. So I love this opening for so many reasons. I mean, you are not wrong. The art direction is insane. And it's so funny to me because I saw this and I want to say this was the very first movie I ever saw in a theater. It's probably not true, but it's the one I remember. So I'm calling it. I was not amazed that that was possible at all. I just believed it because I was like 7.
Hmm.
But I think any adult watching this was completely floored during that scene that you talk about, where the refrigerator opens and this guy is like, he is literally grabbing a Tweety bird that is floating around Roger's head. And he's like, what is this? This is a Tweety bird. I specifically called for stars. And he's like, it's a Tweety bird. And he's throwing the Tweety bird on the ground. And this is a human throwing a cartoon. And it looks amazing. I didn't realize how cool that was until yesterday when I watched this movie for the pod. It is so cool the way that they had the interaction, and I don't know how they did it. There's definitely certain parts of it that kind of make sense where they could cut things and splice things a certain way, but in those instances where you have that close up, I don't know how. I have no idea, but I really love also at the beginning when we are first introduced to Eddie Valiant, we're first introduced to kind of the job that he's given. You're kind of in the middle of things. And if you're not paying attention, you don't really know what's going on. And I love that because in a true film noir, that is exactly what ends up happening.
Hmm.
You have to play catch up real quick the first 20 minutes of most film noirs. It used to drive me nuts. I really love it though that it doesn't give you any catch up. You're like just right there in the middle of this plot that's starting and you don't even realize what's happening until you're halfway kind of down the train with it. And I love that. So you had to learn really quick who Eddie Valiant was. You had to understand what kind of a person he was. He needed some money. He had borrowed money out of his girlfriend's till. Dolores, played by Joanna Cassidy, she like runs this bar and he owes her money. And that's why he has a very specific amount that he needs to do this job. He
Hmm.
does not normally work for Toons, for which are what they unaffectionately call cartoons. He used to, but he doesn't now. And there's a whole backstory behind that. But I love the first 20 minutes of this because it's incredible and it just starts just like a real film noir, but it's a very like goofy kid friendly version of it, which I
Hmm.
enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. I love kind of the interaction there. He goes and pays a visit to Dolores, right? And he tells her he's got this new job. Can I borrow my camera? And you find out a little bit about their relationship, right? It seems like they have kind of kind of this on again, off again kind of thing, right? They've gone and done some vacationing together and things, but Eddie just seems kind of like he's down on his luck, and we learn a little bit more about that right after he goes and kind of does this job. He goes to the club. He is there sitting with Marvin Acme. Who is there to see this performer, this dancer, Jessica Rabbit, who comes out and is this sultry vixen. I think that there was an actual dancer, and they kind of traced over that there for the performance for Jessica Rabbit from this because again things are like happening. Like Jessica Rabbit is pulling like literally like the scarf out of like Marvin Acme's jacket there and like rubbing his head with it. Like it's so like mind blowing watching it back now, trying to figure out the way that this was made. But Eddie is going to get the drop on them. He ends up getting kicked out of the club, but he's able to peek into a window and sees Jessica and Marvin Acme. They're doing the deed. And what deed is that? That is playing patty cake, patty cake, patty cake. Says Roger Rabbit, and that's not very good. So Eddie Valiant goes home, develops a film, delivers the bad news to Roger, and that's where our story starts to fall apart.
Yeah. Roger does not take it well. When you're older, you understand what patty cake means, but in the reality of this show, it's actually pictures of them playing patty cake, which I love. Again, this is a very kid-friendly film noir. It's so great. But you automatically don't you think something's up. So Marvin Acme is the owner of the Acme Company. And one of the things I love about that is that's from Warner Brothers. It is the company that has all of the things. So because they
make
all
all
of
the
products.
anvils. They make all of the
Right.
rockets that Wile E.
Right.
Coyote shoots off. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right. But it has all these things and they're real things. He's got this giant warehouse. That's really cool, except when he turns up dead. And Marvin Acme ends up at the bottom of what was it? Not a piano. It was a giant box
Safe,
of
I think,
a
or
safe.
gets dropped on his head. I think is
Yeah.
what it was. Something gets dropped on his head. Yeah, and he ends up dead. I really love the scene kind of after Roger is presented with this, right? Well, a couple of things. Roger gets given like a shot of like scotch that he drinks, and it kind of explodes. He ends up like bursting through the window of the office. Another really cool effect, how that just happened to like cut out in this exact rabbit shape when the rabbit is a cartoon. That's pretty amazing. But then Eddie Valiant goes home. That's one of my favorite kind of little like glimpses into the character development part of this movie is you go and Eddie's there. Of course, he's drinking and ends up passing out, but it kind of like pans around the desk and you see his brother, right? Because that's Valiant and Valiant. That's the name of the company there, and it has his brother's seat there, which is all covered in dust and all of his stuff, and it kind of goes around to these pictures of the brothers working and working for their father and stuff, and it gives you a little bit more insight that Eddie's brother is dead, but we still don't really know like how that happened and why Eddie got to this place that he's in right now. So the next day, of course, Acme is dead. So you're the private eye on the case. That means you have to show up there to Acme's warehouse.
Right. And Jessica is there. Again, she slaps the heck out of him. She says, I hope you're proud of yourself and those pictures you took. You're the reason he's dead. And that slap looks totally real. I don't know. Again, I think you're right. I mean, the only way this makes sense is if they had like a draw over a person, although I have no idea who on this planet looks like has the same body shape as Jessica Rabbit, because it's like a Barbie doll on steroids. But it's amazing. They're collecting some evidence, and we meet this gentleman by the name of Judge Doom. Eddie doesn't like him immediately. Judge Doom
No one should
is
like
there.
him immediately.
I mean, well, he looks awful, right? He's played by Christopher
His,
Lloyd.
his name is Judge Doom. That's bad.
His name is Judge Doom. Hell of a guy, Judge Doom. Really nice. Have him over at my family picnic all the time. But he has this big scary looking like hat. He's covered in black. He has he's the human judge of Toon Town. Now, Toon Town is the place where all of the cartoons in the world, I guess, live, or at least in Hollywood. And he bought the election in order to do it. He's got these weasel minions, the Toon Patrol. They're all from New York. They have these really awful, like real fun, like wise guy accents. It's really hilarious. But he has this idea, and he's created this stuff called the dip. It's a chemical concoction of acetone, benzene, and turpentine, which sounds real bad for humans as well, but apparently humans are fine if they touch it, but it will kill cartoons. It like melts them, and it's so awful. He takes it, this traumatized me. This is probably the first thing that ever traumatized me as a kid. He takes this little cartoon shoe that is like squeaking,
didn't do anything wrong,
was actually cuddling up to him, just probably trying to find his soulmate, right? And this horrible Judge Doom like puts it in the dip. It's awful, and it's really hard to watch. Oh my god.
It is, yeah.
My poor son was like, "This isn't real, right?" And I was like, "No, dude, it's a cartoon." But still, holy moly.
It's a cartoon shoe. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What are you doing? I mean, in fairness, shoe. Did you see Judge Doom? Don't lay low, guy. So yeah, so that's what's happened, right? Roger clearly killed Marvin Acme. That's the only explanation for this. Does Eddie feel bad that he put Roger in this position? Maybe, possibly, I don't know for sure, but he's going to go back home, right? He gets the rest of his pay, and he heads back home there, and waiting for him out in the kind of the entryway to his office there is baby Huey. And baby Huey's like, I know Roger, he didn't do it, just knock it off, or would have never killed Marvin Acme, because Marvin Acme always said that he was going to leave, Toon Town to us Toons. He really loved the Toons, and therefore we all really loved him, for sure. So Roger definitely didn't do this. And Eddie goes into his apartment and finds out that Roger is on the lam and hiding there in Eddie's apartment. And I really love I really love this kind of interaction that they have, because Eddie asks, Roger how he found it, or if anyone followed him there, and Roger's like, no, I only asked like 100 people where you live, and then of course the guy at the liquor store knew exactly where you live, and he comes in, and about that time, all of the weasels come in to find handcuffed Eddie Valiant there washing up his laundry, which again, more of these amazing special effects. There's one in particular I want to mention here, and then I'm gonna get off my soapbox about how incredible all this stuff looks. But when Roger is first there and they're having their conversation, he pulls out his brother's chair and leaves streaks in the dust. I don't know how they did it. It's unbelievable that they did. So kudos to those magic makers out there. Unbelievable, unbelievable. And then you get into kind of like the most humorous section of the movie here, I think, is between Eddie and Roger Rabbit.
Oh yeah. Because Roger is like, Eddie, Roger Rabbit's whole world is about making people laugh. And that's what he's trying to say. He's like, I would never have hurt anybody. I can't hurt anybody. It's against my mantra, man. All I do is make people laugh. And Eddie Valiant's like, nah, man, I don't think you're funny at all. I think you're awful. And he has this please, and he's trying to make him laugh. He's trying to do all these things. He's like, nah. And then the weasels come and they're talking to Eddie, and Eddie is trying to hide him because he's got to get to the bottom of something that's going, on, and who would have done this. What he sees in the pictures that he took upon further investigation is that Marvin Acme actually had his will on him at that time when he was playing patty cake with Jessica Rabbit. So he knows that the will was around, and the will has since gone missing. And so he's like, well, do you have it? Do you have any idea? Did you see anything, Roger? And Roger's like, no, all I did was when I realized that my wife was playing patty cake, she was just a victim of circumstance. And I wrote her a love letter, and I found this nice sheet of paper, and I write, how do I love thee? And it's really hilarious. And he's jumping up and down on the bed. I don't know how they do it when he's trying to hide him he pretends to be washing dishes or washing his socks out when the weasels are there, and the splashing that's happening because Roger is actually in the water. I don't know how they did that. It's insane. It looks so good. It really did make me believe as a child that cartoons were real in Hollywood and we could live with them. And I remember I remember this film was at the cornerstone of that. And I remember being so disappointed when my dad had to tell me that it was all special effects. By the way, the set direction of Eddie Valiant's house, like the way his
Oh, his
room
office, yeah.
is freaking amazing. And I just want to point out it was Dangerous Liaisons that won.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah, I looked it
sorry,
up too.
but no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, this is
I
this is the real
no.
dangerous liaison right here was whoever whatever coup happened to rob Who Framed Roger Rabbit of this award for sure. Um yeah, I love this stuff so much. And then we're got to get back to the case, right? Because now we have Roger there as handcuffed to you. So what do? You go over to Dolores's diner, and Dolores has done a little bit of digging for you because Dolores is the real hero here of the story, which happens more often than not in these film noir kind of tales. But she does a little bit of digging, and it turns out that Toon Town was set to be bought, if Acme's will couldn't be found. So who stood to profit from that? That, of course, was Maroon there. So that's going to put him next up in the line of sights for people. But what do you do with Roger, right? You have to hide him somewhere. Luckily, this is back in the 40s. So in the back of Dolores's bar is like this like speakeasy kind of thing, which is really cool. I always really like this section because I had like this little like secret like lookout you could look at. My favorite line in the whole movie is when Eddie Valiant's trying to like saw through the handcuff and Roger just slips out of it. And he says, "You could have done that any time." And Roger says, "Well, only when it was funny," which I think is amazing and hilarious. So he gets him there. Of course, Doom shows up and, threatens to, turn this place over, but everyone sticks to their guns, just like Roger predicted, right? If you make someone laugh, they'll be on your side forever. And that is exactly what happens there. And that leaves Eddie then a chance to go and talk to Maroon. Like, what are you doing, you knucklehead? You totally hired me to like frame this whole thing so you could buy Toontown. But we never really get a full good answer because Maroon gets shot by Jessica Rabbit. I don't know.
I don't know. A word about Jessica Rabbit because we talk about this, right? Jessica is this amazing looking redhead. She's got this figure that kills. Everybody just thinks that she's like this hottest thing ever. And she is in love and completely devoted, seems completely devoted to Roger. And he's like, why? Eddie's like, I don't understand. She says, look, you were paid to take those pictures of me playing patty cake. I was threatened by Maroon, okay, threatened Roger's career if I didn't pose for those. So you're being set up. You're this is all a misunderstanding. I love Roger and I would do anything to support him and be with him. And Eddie still is like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand. But then what we see in these scenes where Eddie is going to the studio to interrogate RK Maroon, Jessica actually hits Roger over the head with a frying pan and
Mhm.
dumps him in a car and
She pulls it out of her
kidnaps him,
purse, which is amazing.
which is
Hits
great.
him,
Again, I need a purse that does these things. Like no matter what, it's got what I need.
throws, th
Carburetor, frying
yeah,
pan, guy who does my
everything.
taxes, whatever.
Everything in there. Throws him in the trunk and speeds off, and that leaves Eddie to give pursuit. Right. You get to see him get in the car and drive up to this very ominous looking tunnel, and you get the feeling that Eddie has seen this tunnel before, right? He kind of stops and pulls off to the side of the road and has a look about, pours himself a drink, and then he pulls like this case out of the back of his car. Another real highlight from my childhood was this cartoon gun with these little cartoon bullets that they get in. And Eddie about this time decides that this is the time to give up on his drink, right? So he pours out that bottle of wild turkey and throws it up in the air, shoots one of the bullets, and blows it up, and then drives through the tunnel into Toontown. It pulls back. It is very much like a silly symphony kind of thing, right? Coming to life there, right in front of your eyes. Smile, want to smile. Say the cartoons, and you get to see every cartoon character that's like ever been created. Even our beloved Mr. Toad rides by on a fire truck there, which is pretty epic, because Eddie Valiant needs to find Jessica Rabbit, and he thinks that he does. But this is an imposter, Jessica Rabbit, here as we spend some time in Toontown.
Yeah. The great thing about being in Toontown, I guess, is that no one can die, including Eddie. He like falls 87 stories from a building, and it's fine. We meet Tweety Bird.
Mhm.
This imposter who looks like Jessica. She only looks like Jessica from a very far away, and then she gets very excited that she sees a man that sees that she looks good for a second, and she's running all over. He's up on this really big sky high apartment building. He's fallen down. He sees Dumbo again. Like, we see all of these characters, and I really love it. But he ends up kind of meeting up with Jessica Rabbit, and they see that she says, "Hey, I kidnapped him. It was for his own good. He didn't do this. But I love the gun. I do want to talk about the gun. It's one of my favorite parts. It's hard to pinpoint because there's so many good bits, but when they're all these Western folks and like, Native American like bullets. And so when like he shoots them, they come out, and then they have their own guns, or they have like their own axes that they went and like do like kill the thing, whatever it is that he's going for. Except when if they can't see it, they're like, "Where did he go? I don't know." And they're these little bullets. It's so great. And the way that they show that Eddie is holding the gun when it's obviously a cartoon gun. Like, I don't get it. Make it make sense. It's so good.
It doesn't make any sense. Absolutely, absolutely. But Jessica reveals, right, that yeah, in fact, Acme did have a will, right, and he gave his will to Jessica for safekeeping, there that night. But when she got it, there wasn't anything on it. It was just blank. So, what does that mean then for the rest of our story? We know now that Jessica hasn't murdered RK Maroon. We suspect now that that was Doom, who just showed up in Toon Town and was trying to get the one up on Eddie Valiant. So what do? You go back to Acme's place and you're trying to figure out this deal with the will, right? So you get there, and about that time, everything kind of comes to a head, right? You get Roger, you get Jessica there at the Acme warehouse. You get Doom, who comes in, rolls in with all of his weasels there, and kind of lays out his master plan, right? He has all this dip. He has like a big, like giant, like I don't know, like kind of crazy machine contraption that's going to spray dip all over Toon Town, because what Doom really did from the start was he basically bought his way into power here to control Toon Town, because he wanted to tear it down and build a freeway through that. Who would ever use a freeway? Says Eddie Valiant. Having just been in Hollywood, California ourselves, everyone uses the freeway, so
Everyone.
maybe not a terrible idea. Judge Doom there for sure, but that's kind of wonky, right? That's crazy. You're going to tear down all of Toontown just to build this road that no one wants? Come on now, get out of here. And they're going to come to fisticuffs, right? You got the weasels there who keep laughing. If you laugh too hard, you die, apparently, if you're a cartoon. I don't know if that's true or not. But you get this final confrontation, and most of it's pretty great, starting with Eddie Valiant doing a little song and dance number.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then the sword. Oh, I love it. I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, he does these amazing vaudeville acts of like pratfalls. He sings. This dip stuff is being sprayed in Roger and Jessica's direction. They are tied together, and Jessica the whole time is she like, "Goodbye, my darling." Like, she's so devoted to this rabbit. I don't get it, but it's really funny. Yeah, apparently you die of laughter easily if you are a cartoon. I don't know how that works. I guess the idea is that you're making people laugh. That's your goal as a cartoon. It's not to laugh yourself. And so Eddie ends up making all of these.
Yeah, all of the weasels laugh. There's a great it had to have been completely happenstance foreshadowing bit, because Judge Doom says to the weasels, he says, "You know what happened to the hyenas, right?" And then we would go on to get the Lion King with the laughing hyenas just a couple years after this. I thought that was it completely happenstance, but the very happy accident there on that.
Yeah, totally works. Totally works. So Doom is there, and he kind of fights with Eddie a couple of times. And I love this because he's got this, and Doom is he gets this big giant vat of glue that he tries to like punch Eddie with. That doesn't really work. Somehow Doom gets caught up in the steamroller thing while he's fighting with Eddie. And it's really gross. Again, it's for kids, but not really,
It's really gross,
because
yeah.
he's screaming, he's shrieking. There's no blood or anything, but it's just very tough to watch. And then we see that Doom is flatter than a pancake, and yet he just peels back up like a
Peels back
piece of
up.
tape or something. And
I
we're
have
like,
to
oh no.
I have to say, I remember watching this as a kid, and the dip in the shoe never really bothered me that much when I was little. It did now more watching it again, but I always remember being like totally freaked out when he got ran over by the steamroller. Like
Yeah.
that was a weird thing. And then yeah, he pops back up. He's like this flattened out little like feather of a person goes over and like sucks down some helium and it like blows him back up, right? Like a balloon. His eyeballs pop out, and it turns out that Judge Doom this whole time has been a Toon himself. That's some betrayal right there. And also weasels. You're gonna work with someone that can destroy your whole thing of being a Toon? Come on now.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Weasels.
think there are multiple layers here, right? And why would, as a Toon, why would you destroy the only place that you could go? Like I don't understand that.
Hmm.
I don't know. But anyway, what we find out is that Judge Doom actually was the Toon that killed Teddy Valiant, which is Eddie Valiant's brother, which makes it's even worse because the one thing that Eddie said that he remembered, he couldn't really remember the guy because he was really high up and far away when he dropped the piano on his brother's head, but he remembered his eyes, his crazy red eyes, and that is
Hmm.
exactly how it looks when his eyes pop out and he
A
turns
high
around and
pitched
he's like,
shriek.
yeah, he's terrifying. I was terrified of this man in black, the Judge Doom. It's really awful. So they struggle again. Doom can do anything because he's a cartoon. So like I love how he pulls out this big anvil and then he pulls out this saw. And the only
Hmm.
thing that Eddie has, he like pulls out a sword that's a singing sword, and it's very much like oh my gosh, what is the singer's name? Blue Eyes. Oh,
Oh
Blue
yeah, it's like
Eyes.
Frank Sinatra. Yeah,
Frank Sinatra's like singing as a sword, and he's like, although I know it's taboo. And it's like, this is not going to help me at all. It's so funny. I love it.
it's pretty great. It's pretty great. Yeah, absolutely. So we have Judge Doom there now has exposed himself as a Toon, of course, and he's ends up knocking poor Eddie Valiant like across the hall. Eddie Valiant can take a punch, I have to say, because he takes that like anvil to the straight to the dome and gets up there. And he kind of scrambles over, and there's one of Acme's little gadgets that he's made for everyone to have a laugh about. Right? Is this like it's like this like hammer kind of thing, but it like a big like boxing glove fist comes out of it, right? And he goes
Yeah.
ahead and he hits that at Judge Doom, who moves out of the way. Of course he does, but luckily for Eddie and the rest of our tunes, that boxing glove hits the lever there to spray out the dip all over the room. So instead of Jessica and Roger Rabbit meeting their fate at the hand of the dip, Judge Doom is going to meet his end at the hands of the dip there, and that's also very gross. It's very gross there as it's spraying across, and Judge Doom is like melting down into that, and he's kind of like a crayon. There's a lot of there's a lot of like Raiders of the Lost Ark here stuff because the bad guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark, like that Nazi guy, like he's got like the black hat and the black coat and stuff.
Mm,
Looks just like Judge Doom's costume, and then like the way that he like melts out like a crayon. That's kind of the same
yeah.
there. I think Industrial Light and Magic worked on both those films. Maybe that's why they got to the same conclusion there on how this guy should meet his untimely fate. But all is well that ends well, right? Jessica and Roger get hoisted down from that hook there. They're going to be able to carry on with their love affair after Roger reads her that love note that he wrote.
Oh, I love it. Oh, and she's so funny. She's like, Roger, you were a pillar of strength. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so great. But at this point, Eddie has figured out what's going on. So he asks Roger, "Hey, why don't you read that love note that you had written?" And he starts to read it, and then he realizes that it's the Acme's will was written on this blank paper in temporarily invisible ink. So it's disappearing, reappearing ink. And we
Hmm.
see this at the beginning when Mr. Acme meets Eddie the first time. He says, "Hey, man, I didn't mean to ruin your shirt. It's disappearing ink. It's totally fine, right?" But apparently it disappears for a little while and then it comes back. And it's kind of like the second joke.
Hmm.
Except that's where Acme's will was, right? And so Roger had it the whole time. And so it's really amazing because we get to see and confirm that the Toons do in fact inherit Toontown. They're all there because that giant dip machine like goes through a
It
wall,
goes through the
and on
wall,
the other
yeah.
side of the wall is where Toontown was. It gets hit by a train and never to be seen or heard from again. But the Toontown is just really happy and excited that they finally get their autonomy. They're not going to be destroyed by this dip, or a freeway is not going to be built right in the middle of it. So that's really great. And all is well that ends well. Eddie seems to be happy, and of course Roger has to test his sense of humor. But it's so funny because Bob Hoskins' character, Eddie, just like he grabs him and kisses him. And again, I don't know how they do it and make it look
And
as real as they do. It's crazy.
and all the tunes cheer. And presumably Eddie Valiant is back on top there and can take on all the tune cases that he wants to from now on. Yeah, and you get every cartoon character that's ever been drawn pretty much there on the screen to kind of end the film, which is amazing. We didn't even mention when they're in Toontown, Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny share the screen, which is kind of wild to think about there as well. And
Totally.
that's kind of how the movie ends, right? All is well that ends well there in that instance. Noir films are kind of tricky to talk about on a side note, so we might have totally made a muck of that. But just the big takeaway here is that it is incredible, and you should go watch it. So, Michaela, let's talk about this a little bit. We mentioned kind of at the top, like how does this even happen, right? In 2024, it doesn't. This doesn't happen ever again anymore. The sharing of studios like this, everyone is way too protective of their stuff. Never going to happen, I don't think. In 1988. The feelings were kind of the same. Like, couldn't believe that this was happening, and dare I say it at this point, I think, the Looney Tunes characters were probably as popular or more popular probably than
Yeah.
than the Disney characters kind of at that point. So that was a big, big boon for Disney to pull this off. And the reasoning behind it, at least from what I could gather doing a little bit of research on this, was Disney's animation studio was really not, firing on all cylinders at this time. We talked about that in The Secret of Nim. They just had the big exodus of all of their animators, and there was a long kind of time between the big Disney films, right? You had like The Aristocrats in 1970, Robin Hood in 1973, and then kind of some smaller things, right? Rescuers, Fox and the Hound, The Black Cauldron, which almost bankrupted Disney in '85. You had a couple of other little things, The Brave Little Toaster, which is amazing, in '87, Oliver and Company, but certainly not those bangers, right? No Cinderella in there for sure. So was Disney animation still a thing? And I guess this was kind of like a gentle reminder that Disney could still do it, and then you would get into like the golden era of Disney films here coming over the next 5-10 years. Little Mermaid, the next year in 1989, and going on then Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, all that stuff. So that's kind of how it happens. But I remember it being like a huge deal, like even back as a like 8-year-old kid watching this.
Oh, completely. I mean, I'm still amazed at how you're able to when like the opening sequence of Toontown, when you first walk in, or when you're first in and you're sitting next to Eddie Valiant basically as he's driving in down that tunnel into Toontown, the fact that there are so many, I mean, it's every cartoon I remember seeing. Tom and Jerry's in it, like they're all there.
Mhm.
And now to think about, we couldn't even mix Marvel correctly, right? Like we had the
Yeah.
old and the new, and DC, where they're like, oh, which DC characters are we going to use with what? I mean, that in and of itself seems like a giant headache that they actually went through and did for the sake of this film. I love the layers of this, because as you say, it is very film noir, so it's kind of who did what and why, and it's kind of, there's supposed to be a lot of intrigue, and there is. But at the end of the day, that piece is kind of sideswept by all of the, shenanigans and
Mhm.
like cartoon hijinks that is really entertaining for kids. But I find this film to be just as entertaining as an adult as I did then, probably because of pieces of like the film noir section, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
layers as to why Eddie didn't want to work for Toons anymore. This kind of washed up guy. What happened? You're led to believe that he and Dolores are finally going to make an honest go of it. Now
Mhm.
that Eddie is kind of back and he's has more trust in Toons now because of the work that's been done, and then the idea that Jessica Rabbit, this person who's so amazing and beautiful, could really fall in love with someone who just makes her laugh. All of those things coming together into one story is probably why this is still on, like, I don't know, top 50 animated films of all time for sure.
Hmm.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's usually in like the top 20. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't watched it in quite a while, and this is a movie that's, you and I will bring up, fairly regularly about a movie that we wanted to talk about. And I remember enjoying it, just this weekend watching it like as much as I did as when I was a kid. And I think that the movie is really magical, like in that sense, is that it is this film noir thing, which is, kind of a more it's like a thinking person's like crime drama, right? Because you have all these kind of ins and outs of it, but I don't remember like as a kid ever being like confused by the film noir like aspects by it. It does a really good job of laying out like who these characters are, and kind of what their motivations were and how you get to the kind of that final conclusion. So I think it works amazingly well for kids, and it has enough of kind of those more adult theme comedic things that will engage you as an adult too. So if you haven't seen this movie in a long time, definitely worth the hour and 40-ish minutes to go back and check it out. It's available on Disney Plus now. And the best way to do that is, of course, with the Roger Rabbit cocktail. So before we sign off on this, any parting words from you, Michaela, other than how dare you, dangerous liaisons? How dare you?
Yeah, I do find myself going back in time, shaking my head at some of the decisions that were made, right? Hindsight being 2020. Look, Dangerous Liaisons is amazing, and we're probably going to talk about it in 2025 because it's one of my favorite films, John Malkovich's films. Absolutely. But come on, man. I mean, this was insane how they did. I mean, I guess because they gave a special award to they feel okay about it. I don't know. Whatever. It's one of the Academy misses in my limited experience from my point of view. But this was really great. It's a great revisiting of comedy. And Bob Hoskins is great. He has this. He's English, I believe, or he was English. And I had no idea. I thought that he was absolutely from like New York in this washed up like
Mhm.
Eddie Valiant fan, right? When he played Smee, I was like, oh, that's a cute accent he puts on. I mean, it's just so good. It's worth everybody's time to go and revisit it if they hadn't seen it, for sure.
Yeah, Bob Hoskins is perfect. If you look at the Wikipedia page, you have to take that with a grain of salt, of course. But it says the list of potential people that were going to play Eddie Valiant is long and lengthy before you even get to Bob Hoskins there. Bob Hoskins is perfect because he fits the time period. He fits the um kind of the attitude of it. He's deadpan enough, but like funny enough that you like you could conceive this guy really being in this place that has this love hate kind of thing with Toontown. So that is it. That is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So hopefully you enjoyed Roger Rabbit and Roger Rabbit Cocktail out there when you go back and revisit this movie. Definitely, if you do that, take pictures of your cocktail, or if you have any other good Roger or Jessica Rabbit variants, definitely let us know that. You can do that on any of our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see the pictures of our cocktails, episode recaps, links to the merchandise shop, to Drink the Video Games, all that stuff, you can do that on our website, which is www.drinkthemovies.com. And if you want to support the podcast even further, get bonus episodes, come do hangouts with us, participate in the patrons only member of the Discord, you can do that on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/drinkthemovies. So, Michaela, now that we're back into some movies, we got another one of your favorites coming up next week, I believe. So people are going to want to make sure that that they get signed up for the podcast, get subscribed, all that stuff, so they know when our drops are coming out. Tell everyone about our drops and where they can subscribe.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week here at Drink the Movies. We do a lobby bar, which is short and sweet, talking about easy cocktails and what's happening in the box office, what's happening in series that are coming out. And then we do our deep dives like this one right here. It's really exciting, but that's not all. We also have Drink the Video Games, which is amazing. You should check that out. Brian does a really great job of doing that. And I get to guest star for like 30 seconds talking about a cocktail. So that's fun too. We do all the things. We can't do this without our listeners, and it's the best job in the world. So thanks to you all for continuing to listen to us and support us. You can leave us a 5-star review. You can share us on all the social medias because that really helps us get all the drink the movies, drink the video game stuff out there.
Absolutely. So that is going to wrap it up for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink the movies. What do you see in that guy? He makes me laugh.